Hey, welcome back. Once again, it's the Flushing Faithful podcast. Um, yeah, I was just watching things play out with Jacob deGrom. I couldn't think of what to say at the time. As you know, it's been back and forth about a new contract for him. And then he went and said something about an innings limit when someone asked him. That was the wrong thing to say. I'm sure he regrets it now because now you have fans against him, even though he's probably the best pitcher in baseball. But it is what it is. When you look at it, he has, what, 4 years in, a contract for $17 million for this year. Next year, it's whatever number it is. It's unlikely to decrease even if he has a bad year, so let's just say 20. That's the reason why I said it should be, if they look at an extension and do it now, they may be able to get him at a bargain versus waiting until he's about to become a free agent and doesn't want to sign. He may want to stay a Met, he may not. So why take that risk? If you take care of it now, you don't have any issues. You get him at a bargain compared to what he would get on the free agency market, though that's questionable these days because of the way things are going. I would say just throw out an offer like 4 or 5 years at $20 million a year. Maybe you have to make it a little more, but that should keep him under contract and not have to worry about the free agent years, because you're also going to have Noah Syndergaard, Zach Wheeler, and Steven Matz. I don't even know what he is, but Syndergaard, maybe you go to him right now and see if he'll take the same contract that Severino took, because if that's the case, then you have cost certainty for 4 years. Even Aaron Nola signed basically the same contract. If you can get him in that range, you have cost certainty for 4 years on a guy who should be an ace, and then he can test out free agency around 30 if he chooses to do so. Zach Wheeler, I believe, is 28, so you might be able to get him on a decent deal, because I was thinking he would get something like those contracts. But the Mets may want to wait and see what he does. But these days, even an average pitcher is getting around $10 million. So would it be that big a stretch if they just gave it to him now? Yeah, so the Mets do have some things to think about when it comes to their pitchers. Is deGrom going to be a guy that you keep? Syndergaard, Wheeler, same thing. Jacob deGrom started pitching much later in life because he was originally a shortstop, so maybe he won't fall off. And then you have guys like Justin Verlander and others who haven't fallen off, even at their advanced stage, or advanced stage in this era of stupid, overly statistical analysis. I would be willing to bet that Jacob deGrom gives you a decent 4 or 5 years after this. Maybe even more. He might be one of those guys who can go into his late 30s, early 40s. Though most players aren't going into their 40s anymore. But he was a shortstop in college. He started pitching in the Mets system, so he doesn't have the wear and tear on his arm. He doesn't have a delivery that's going to make him an injury risk. He did have Tommy John, so I guess there's that for the people who are skeptical about someone having it and them maybe not being stable enough in the elbow area, for lack of a better term. Um, but if you think about it, say he signed for 4 years, 20 million, in addition to the 17 that he's getting this year. That's essentially a 5-year contract at 97 million. Add another 20 million, it's 117 million. Maybe you need to make it 120, whatever the case may be, versus him going to free agency and getting 30 million a year. Then you're adding another 50 on top of it. So to me, it makes sense to at least see if they can get him at a hometown discount. And what I would probably do is talk to Jeff Barry about Syndergaard first. See if you can get him on that under-market contract. Then sign deGrom. This way, you don't have it look like, hey, the Mets can throw out all this money. What about Syndergaard? Now, he's a good pitcher, but he hasn't shown that he can be dominant like Jake. I mean, he was, but he also went through injuries too. One of the injuries was a stupid injury, which kept him out for a long time because he was working out to try and throw harder. The Mets have 3 pitchers who look like they could be aces. I don't know what Wheeler is. He's an enigma because he had all the potential, and to me, he was a flame out until last year. I didn't even want to see him back when him and Harvey went down from the injury because I didn't think he could put it together. But I guess since he was talking to Jake, learning from him, watching, he's now more capable than he was. And that would make him an ace if he can continue it, because during the second half of the season, he was even better than deGrom was, and deGrom was the Cy Young winner. The first half was just horrible, but maybe he was trying to get his bearings. I mean, Jacob deGrom started doing something that most pitchers these days don't do, which is throwing twice between starts instead of one. What it does is it keeps you consistent. You keep your arm angle. I mean, these are things that can go out of whack during the season, and these are things that pitchers used to do, but now they don't. I don't know if it's because the millions they're worth or whatever the case may be, or pampering them like they're doing the sports stars these days. I mean, back in the day, people used to throw every day. In between starts were 2-3 times sometimes. Some guys just threw every day to keep the arm loose, like Livan Hernandez. But those things aren't done these days. But Jake seems to be going back to it. From what I gather, he talked to John Smoltz. Smoltz told him what he did, and he was doing the same thing, which kept him consistent all year. You didn't see those games get out of hand where he went from 7 innings to 2 innings, 8 runs, or anything like that, which is what you see way too often these days because players are getting out of their routine. Anyway, forget the long diatribe. Sign Jake. And sign Syndergaard and Wheeler too. I mean, you may want to wait on Wheeler to see if he is that same guy, but if you wait too long, then he might want to test free agency. And to get pitchers like these guys is not easy. They just tried to get one from the Phillies. And what happened? He's having Tommy John. You had 3 guys right now who have shown the ability. One does it all the time. The other 2, we have to see. So, I'd roll the dice, throw the contract offer out there. If they say no, then they say no. What else is there? I mean, waiting only means you're paying more, and you know as well as I do that the Mets are cheap. If he gets to a place where he's asking for $30 million a year, he will not be a Met. Well, those are my thoughts on the Mets pitching. Jacob deGrom plus Wheeler and Syndergaard. Not including Matz because I don't know what he is. If he stays healthy, maybe he's a trade chip. Unless they really want to keep him because lefties bloom later. Yeah, and Vargas, he's garbage. Just trade him. Get rid of him. Dump him. Sign Gio Gonzalez or anyone else. Anyway, that's it for this episode of the Flushing Faithful podcast. Check you guys next time.